If our love is tragedy, why are you my remedy? If our love's insanity, why are you my clarity?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, this is Chad, and today I'm going to be coming to you with a very special topic. We're going to be talking about relationships today. It's a topic that I enjoy very much, a topic a lot of other people enjoy very much. I know a thing or two about relationships, you know what I'm saying, so we're going to break it down. I do have an up-and-coming video that's in the works soon. It is going to be a smash or pass. We are also going to possibly go as far as to dive in as to some of the neurotransmitters that are implicated when we meet someone, feelings that we get, some other factors that people are naturally attracted towards beyond what we might typically expect. And it should be an interesting chat, so go ahead and just dive right in on this. So this looks to be a series of videos. This initial video, it's pretty much just going to be me talking to you guys. We're going to go over some articles. I plan on only doing research that's at least well-founded enough that we can discuss upon it, rather than just passing around ideas. That's always great, but I do have a preference that a majority of the topics that we're going to discuss here, we are going to back them by research, just something that we can go back on to critically discuss a little more, and then it might get to the point that we might actually one day conduct our own experiments and have our own research so that we may contribute to the field in one way or the other. For some of my future videos, I am looking for people that would be interested in having a discussion, to sit down and have a discussion, and we can discuss the results of the up-and-coming Smash or Pass video. So feel free to comment below. In the future, I do plan on having a guest upon here, someone that can just sit down here. To get another chair, of course, that's gonna be one issue. We sit down with and have a discussion based upon these topics. We can go over some of the results of the up-and-coming Smash or Pass video, discuss some of the reasonings as to why those people decided to go with the people that they chose, discuss some of the research that we are planning on going into a little bit today, and just discuss their perspective. So with that being said, let's dive right in. I do have an article here. It's called Love at First Sniff, What's the Science of Attraction by the Sydney Morning Herald. Quoted research done by anthropologist Helen Fisher. It says, quote unquote, men and women around the world are attracted to those with good complexions. So if you're watching this video, go ahead and leave a comment below. Tell me if that's true or not. I want to hear from you guys. So go ahead and tell me, leave a comment. Are you interested in people with good complexions? Is that something that you immediately notice upon, among other things, when you are meeting somebody? But obviously it's not good enough to just state that people are naturally attracted to people with good complexions. We have to break down and dive in. What exactly does it mean to have a good complexion? So I do have this article by chowis.com titled 8 Signs of Having a Good Complexion. So I have bullet points here for you guys as well, so you guys can follow along. So we have not having dry skin, not having redness, also known as rosacea. Rosacea, yes, I did just look that up, so you guys want to eviscerate me in the comments for pronouncing it wrong. Having skin that is elastic and taut when pulled. So being well hydrated, drink your water, that's always important. Not having dark patches, not having acne, not having wrinkles, has the overall appearance of being smooth. So these seem like a pretty good criteria, I would say, objectively speaking. With all those things, I would say, how could you not have good skin if all those things are crossed off? But I mean, that's a lot of criteria to be met, honestly. You know, and we can't all be perfect. So how is everyone supposed to have quote unquote good skin if all of those boxes need to be checked off? Well, luckily, there are other common indicators that people tend to use when attempting to determine someone's attractiveness. So let's look at some of the other more common attributes that people tend to find attractive in others upon initial encounters. So we've already established that according to anthropologist Helen Fisher, men and women both are attracted to people who have good complexions. But what are some other qualities that people may find attractive? A common belief that people tend to have is having the appearance of wealth will cause others to find you attractive. Or perhaps healthy looking, having the appearance that you're healthy, that you're well put together, that you're fit. Certainly being in good shape, appearing well toned and fit can improve someone's chances of meeting others, right? But how much do these attributes comparatively affect others' decisions when meeting someone? In the July 2010 issue of Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, researchers theorize that people tend to be naturally attracted to others who resemble themselves and are their parent of the opposite sex. Very interesting. They theorize that this might be the case due to evolutionary instincts. Theoretically, breeding with others who have genetics that are close but not too close to you may provide some genetic fortitude for your offspring. Breeding with first cousins or siblings increases the likelihood of your children inheriting genes that they would not receive, or more specifically expressed if it weren't for the increased likelihood caused by inbreeding. This is deep stuff, so now we're getting into the science talk. So let me explain. Everyone in the world has 23 chromosomes. MJ, stand up. Within those chromosomes, there are hundreds of thousands of genes, and for every gene, there are 2 copies, known as alleles. These alleles are either recessive or dominant. If they are recessive, your child will require 2 of the recessive alleles, one from each parent, in order to not only inherit that gene, but also express its features in them. If they inherit a dominant allele from one parent, such as brown eyes, it will not matter what the other gene that they receive from their parent contains, because the dominant gene will take precedence in its presence and expression. Think of it this way. For each chromosome, there are 2 arms. In order to purchase a recessive gene such as blue eyes, we need to give those arms 2 blue quarters. Now for the dominant gene, they only need just 1 red quarter, but the other quarter can be of either color, red or blue. But in order for our offspring to receive a recessive allele, they need 2 blue quarters. And again, for the dominant one, it doesn't matter what kind of quarter they get. As long as they get 1 red, the other one can be red or blue. Either way, dominant one will take precedence and they will receive that dominant gene. And again, where do we get our quarters from? Well, from our parents, we each get just 1 quarter from each parent, blue or red. We don't know what color quarter our parents have in their pockets unless they get their genetics analyzed at a lab to see what genes they carry. We also don't know what color quarter each parent will give. Even if they have both colors in their pocket, they can only give 1 to their child, and that one is given by chance. So according to that article by Chalice, it did discuss about how we might be attracted towards others who appear similar to us or of our parent of the opposite sex, because there might be some implication of us breeding our genes mixing well with people who have genes that are a little bit closer towards ours without being too far apart. So how does inbreeding come into this? Well, if we are carriers of a gene that can cause problems such as cystic fibrosis, which is a gene that's recessive in its presentation, then according to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, who considers fibrosis to be a defective gene, we have a 25% or 1 out of 4 chance of passing along this trait to our offspring. Because each parent has a 50% chance of giving their child their recessive gene, but for both parents to give their child the recessive gene, it's only a 25% chance. Now again, since recessive genes are not dominant, it won't matter what the other gene is if the child just gets 1 dominant gene from either parent. That dominating allele takes over the expression to the characteristic at hand, and while the child could still become a carrier of the recessive gene, that child will never express that characteristic in their personal features or body unless they avoid getting the dominant gene, which of course is by chance. So again, if we were to mate with someone else who has a very similar gene pool, such as our siblings or first cousins, the likelihood that they would have similar defective genes as we do, normally if we were to mate with someone else who had recessive defective genes, it wouldn't be the end of the world, so to speak, because our offspring probably wouldn't receive those recessive defective genes if we did not possess them. However, if you're mating with someone with the same genetic makeup as yourself, then obviously the likelihood that you both will distribute the defective genes to your child increases. Now, cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, and Tay-Sachs disease are all autosomal recessive disorders, meaning if you happen to be a carrier, all you would have to do is breed with someone who is not a carrier of these disorders, and your children would never receive them. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't be a carrier for them, it's just that they would not have them in their expression, and their children would not get them unless they mated with somebody else who was also a potential carrier for them. So there are advantages to breeding with someone who doesn't carry genetic disorders, or at least the same genetic disorders as you. Ergo, the advantages against inbreeding. Please don't eviscerate me for implying that. I'm sure there's some people that are pro inbreeding, and that's completely fine for those people, I guess. Now, please bear with me if you're already very familiar with these concepts. We have to treat everyone watching this as though they've never been introduced to these concepts before the viewers who haven't. So if this feels like I'm repeatedly drilling the concepts into your brain, that's just for the sake of understanding. Here's another article. According to thoughtcode.com, the brain needs 17 repetitions of introduced information before it's transferred into your long-term database. And if that's the case, then it's no wonder I could never remember anything in school. Am I right? We only had these concepts introduced once, and then we had to move on. I mean, of course, in school, teachers are strapped in the time that they have to teach the class for the sake of time. They have to commission the student to reintroduce themselves to the lessons taught within the classroom on their own time, whether it be again after class with a tutor or while doing homework. As not every student takes as long to commit certain things to memory, or at least commit the general concept of the lesson to memory and make a mental note to review that concept at a later time. But that hardly means anyone is stupid just because they quote unquote take longer to learn a concept than somebody else. Perhaps that person just has a different perspective on that concept in question, or perhaps that person just likes to have a very thorough understanding of that concept so that they're not scratching their head and rattling their brain trying to clarify those concepts mid-test. It's very understandable. So don't beat yourself up at all if you feel like you take longer to absorb information than your peers. Perhaps you're just deep in your commitment and to the trustworthy process of data transference from your short-term to your long-term database. Well, obviously I've gotten off track here, but I think that's all right. Reviewing these concepts myself is also another way of reinforcing information by way of teachback, and there's many different ways that we can introduce information to our brains and reinstill knowledge through auditory, visual, teaching, etc. So never be intimidated or shy about sharing and reconciling the things you've learned, because that's how you clarify and reinstill. Well, this has been a wholesome experience. So I have a list of recessive traits here, and I will go ahead and include them in the video, of course, so you guys can take a look at them. And yeah, let's see. So we have attached ear lobes, inability to roll tongue, 5 fingers, type O blood, hitchhiker's thumb, blue eyes, of course we discussed that, albinism, an albino lacks pigment or coloration of the skin, and sickle cell anemia. We briefly touched upon that as well. So yeah, some very interesting examples here. Obviously there are more genes to be discussed. Also discuss some things that are dominant genes. So things that obviously if you do want your children to inherit some genes such as these perhaps, you also have to consider, is the person that you're planning on mating with, or do they have some of these dominant genes which would prevent these genes from ever possibly occurring in that person with the dominant gene, unless of course they're a carrier. But if they did receive the dominant gene from the person that you're mating with, then you're never going to get them. So yeah, that's a very interesting list. So obviously this isn't every single recessive gene or recessive disease that one could get, but it's also interesting to consider because you do want your child to perhaps inherit some of these traits such as blue eyes and whatnot, then you might need to consider, is the person that you're planning on mating with, are they a carrier at all for these? Because if perhaps for some reason you want your child to have type O blood for whatever reason, might be preference, I don't know, then if the person that you're planning on mating with is not a carrier for that gene, then it will be impossible for your child to inherit that gene for type O blood, even if they inherit your gene alone, because of course it's a recessive gene, so you need 2, one of each, one from mother and father, one from each parent. Obviously it's much easier to anticipate the inheritance of a dominant gene such as brown eyes, because you can just look in the mirror and say, hey, I got brown eyes, so automatically I know as long as I'm not a carrier, it's a guarantee that my child will be inheriting that brown eyes gene, or unless you're maybe a carrier of the green eyes gene or something else. I don't know, an albino eyes gene, I believe that is a thing as well. Take a look here. Oh, it is? White eye color is a mutant phenotype caused by mutation in the gene. I swore I saw that somewhere. I swore I saw that. So there you go. So very interesting topics to be discussed, to say the least. I would love to have a discussion one-on-one with somebody, not just about genes, but also some of the implications we naturally are to consider beyond that, because on this channel I want to talk about also the science that goes behind it, science that goes behind us being naturally attracted. And we will get into some other topics as well, such as nature versus nurture. I, for one, am a full-on nurtured believer. I think that it's much more impactful than any of our genes that have. I think our genes do play a role in our upbringing and the way we present ourselves in society, but only to a certain extent. So I would love to have these talks with other people. If you are interested in having a sit down with me and being on the show, please leave a comment, hit me up on one of my social medias. We can definitely get you in. Perhaps even if it was just through Zoom, if I could get a group of people through a Zoom podcast, that would be awesome. That would be a great way. Yeah, so I think that does it for this episode. I know we kind of got off a little track on the science, some of the implications that people naturally have and what they're attracted to upon meeting somebody else, but that's okay. I think we're just going to say that for part 2. We're going to discuss some of the things that we did cover on this episode, and we'll go into a little bit more less scientific reasonings behind why people are naturally attracted towards others. Not just because they have a similar face, they have a similar appearance as somebody else, or they have good skin, or they look like their mother or father. Very, very curious things to say the least. We won't say weird, we won't say strange. We're gonna say very curious. We're gonna say it's peculiar information because it's information that we may or may haven't possibly has not been introduced to us before. So they're things to consider, they're things to discuss. I love to have these kinds of conversations. I wanna, again, really just talk about these, but also have some scientific backing towards it. Love to have just a discussion with or without science at some point, but on this channel we are trying to look for some kind of contribution to the psychological field. So we're going to be reviewing more information that has already been established. And again, one day we might conduct some experiments of our own, take our findings in our small sample size and use it to contribute to the field. So that might be at a later date, obviously. But with that being said, guys, I really appreciate you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on your thoughts, opinions, what you would like to see more of. If you don't want to hear me just rambling on, less scientific talk. If you appreciate the scientific talk, and if you think I should have more articles, less articles, please leave a comment below. And please reach out to me on some of my social media handles. I'd love to get involved and discuss a little bit more with you guys on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, wherever. Find me. Continue this discussion. Look out for the video coming soon. I'm still looking for a few more candidates that would like to participate. Again, it's all for the sake of science. It's all for the sake of what are people naturally, honestly attracted to when they meet each other. I think that obviously things have changed from the time that we were children to the time that we are now. There are social implications that have affected our implicit bias that we have towards others. Everybody has a preference. It might be a physical preference. Some people might be a sapiosexual, meaning that they're attracted to somebody's mind. That's what really gets them off, so to speak. That's what tickles their fancy, one way to put it. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I really look forward to the next video, the next discussion with you guys. Once again, please leave a like and comment down below. If you're new to the channel, which I'm pretty sure you are since this is my first video officially, go ahead and please subscribe, hit that bell, the YouTube algorithm. Again, I really appreciate it, and I'm out.